What's up? Thank you so much for checking out this video on how to create your very own basic and generic wargaming unit profile. If you have miniatures lying around, Lego minifigures you haven't dusted off in eons, or STLs from that Patreon 3 months ago that you've been waiting to print, now is your opportunity. We're going to grab a miniature off of our shelf and get started right away. In this video, we are going to be building a unit profile for this dope 3D printed Agent of Chaos from Cults 3D. So whenever you're creating a unit, you get to use one of these little sheets, and you can kind of think of these as your character sheet of sorts for your Warhammer figures, Lego figures, whatever little miniatures that you're going to be using. They will be built off of one of these archetype sheets. And this is just kind of a sample one. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller, depending on the type of unit that you're building. But since we're just going to do a demo with this little guy, I figured I'd just kind of use one of our standard ones. So you'll start up here at the top left, and you get to name your unit. Looking at this guy, I think he looks kind of like a preacher, like an evil preacher maybe, so we'll call him a Dark Voice. Ooh, evil. And then you'll choose your type of unit. And there are a couple different types. There are characters, minions, squads, and contraptions. Since he is just a single miniature, we're going to make him a character. These are kind of the linchpins of your army. They're going to guide your strategy, and they're also going to be the most powerful single miniatures that you have on the board. So your type of unit will determine the number of skill points you get to assign, and it will generally correlate to a little bit more powerful models. Then you get to choose a category. There are a bunch of different categories. There's demonic, deific, plant, undead, flesh, machine. There might even be a couple others that I'm forgetting at the moment, but these are going to change what characteristics you can select. There's a lot of overlap, so don't worry about it too much. A lot of it's thematic, but it will have a little bit of in-game kind of power checking on how strong one given unit can be, depending on the characteristics it can take. So we're just going to call him Flesh. He might be demonic, but Flesh is kind of a good catch-all. Then we will move over here into the stats. Now, because he is a character unit, he gets 10 skill points to assign to these different skills. And each is going to start at 1, except for your movement, which is going to start at 3. We don't need him to be a particularly quick moving character, so I think we're just going to leave his movement at 3. And then because he is a character unit, he also automatically gets 4 extra health points. So his health would start at 1, because he's a character, now it starts at 5. And I think we're going to want him to last a while, because I imagine him as kind of like a frontliner, sowing dissent and discord in the enemy lines. So we might actually put another 3 points into his HP, and that will make it an 8. Okay. His accuracy and his strength I don't think need to be super high, because he's mostly going to rely on magic abilities, so we'll just leave those at 1. Then his resistance is going to be, let's make that 3. We want him to be relatively tough. And then his agility, I think we will also make a 3. And his arcana, let's see, we used 3 points there, 3 points there, or 2 points there rather, and 2 points there, so that means we're up to 7. Let's put a little bit in Arcana, because we want him to be pretty consistent at casting spells, but we can use some characteristics to alter that as well. And then we will also do his Vigor up just 1. This is to kind of avoid the mental attacks of the enemy, so it'll give him a little bit of flexibility with his Vigor. Alright, then you'll move over to these standard attacks. So every model, unless the characteristic says otherwise, is able to make a standard range attack and a standard melee attack. The number of attacks that they get are equal to the number of models in the unit, so because he's just a character, he's 1 model, he gets 1 dice for each of those attacks. And then because we haven't done any characteristics that'll change it, each of those attacks will just do 1 damage apiece. Now we get to move into the really fun part, which is choosing the characteristics. BaGW has over 75 different characteristics for you to choose from, ranging in all different power levels. So there's a lot of customization that you can do. But for this guy, we're really going to lean into kind of that dark sorcerer preacher kind of vibe. And we're going to start off by giving him a legendary arcanist ability. This allows him to take 3 powers, and powers are what you can imagine as the spellcasting, the psyker abilities, even if you're playing like Warhammer Legion-esque game, the force abilities that your characters have, just kind of any supernatural ability that they have. So for him, we are going to give him, he gets 3 because it's a legendary characteristic. We will give him Cackling of the Forgotten, which is kind of a splash damage attack that's a little bit harder to cast. Unsnarling Chaos, which is kind of a ramp ability that lets him get better at spellcasting the more other people fail at spellcasting. And we'll also give him Darkness, which is kind of a shrouding ability that you'll actually get to see him use in the next video. Those characteristics, or that characteristic rather, will add 25 points to the cost for this model, and we'll explain that in just a minute. Then we're also going to give him Assistance. Now, normally, you can only take a given characteristic once per model or per unit that you're building, but Assistance actually lets you take it more than once. And what this means is he gets these 2 little side miniatures, and they don't contribute really anything to the gameplay, but they just let us know that because he has this characteristic, he now gets to roll an extra Arcana dice for each of those little guys. So normally, because he's just 1 model, whenever he was making a skill check with the Arcana, he would only roll 1 dice. But now, because he has this characteristic twice, he gets to roll 3 dice, 1 for him and 1 for each of these little dudes. So this characteristic costs 10 skill points to take each time, and we're going to take it twice, so that's 20 more points. Then we're also going to give him the Curse ability, and Curse just lets you spend an action to deal an automatic d6 minus 2 damage to a target in 6 inches. So this has potential to do a fair amount of damage, and it's a nice way for him to keep dishing out damage without having to reassign his skill points to accuracy or to strength. And that characteristic costs 15 armor points. Then lastly, both because the model has kind of these cool scroll work things, and because it's fitting for the strategy we're building with him, we're going to give him the Ancient Texts characteristic. And this allows him to re-roll Arcana rolls of 1 or of 2. So now, because of his characteristics, he'll get to roll 3 Arcana dice instead of 1, and he'll get to re-roll any 1s or 2s to see if he can get a better result. And that ability costs 20 points. So that's all the characteristics we're going to do for this guy. At the moment, we'll add up all of these, 25 plus 40, so that's 80 skill points. Then he's 1 model, and characteristic units base cost of 20 points. So that means the total points for bringing this model into the game is 100. Then you'd repeat this process for any of the other units in your army, and then you would sum up the total army point costs for all of those units. I hope that was a cool demonstration for you and gave you a good idea kind of what to expect out of the system. You can do this process with literally any miniature that you have lying around. Paper, plastic, pewter, whatever you've got, you can build with this system. With over 75 different characteristics and over 30 different powers, you can build literally quadrillions of possible unit profiles. So go ahead, back to Kickstarter, and get those minis off your shelf.